make a move and the bunny gets it.
I said, put the bunny back in the box. Why couldn't you put the bunny back in the box?
It's showtime.
Psychically, I'm very well endowed.
I wanna know what you're thinking. There are some things you can't hide. I wanna know what you're feeling. Tell me what's on your mind.
A night, the bunny is thinking. Now, last Monday night, I had an issue where I was getting robotic there towards the end of it. Hopefully, I moved it to an earlier time. We're maybe in the soccer matches about this time. Fingers crossed. Anyway, I'm off their line, and so I think what happened is they fired up the streaming over there, and it just bottoms me out. It's happened since it happened around 7, so I'm 7:30 there ish. So I'm gonna try 6 o'clock tonight. See if it does any better. Anyway, tonight, Easter was yesterday, and so I was thinking of a topic that was timely, but maybe one that not everybody's talking about. And well, I'm not Catholic, and so when people talk about the Shroud of Turin, they immediately just assume you're a Catholic because Catholics are kind of like into that whole I artifact culture, in that if Jesus uh, stopped here and rested on this post, and like, we'll build a whole entire chapel around it. I that's a little bit more Catholic than a Protestant, which I am. But the Protestants, because of that, because of their attempt to differentiate themselves from Catholicism, they have missed a few things. And one of the big things they have missed is the Shroud of Turin. Now, I started out at 27 and now I'm down to 4. So I don't know. Maybe I'm getting, maybe people are like, oh my gosh, run away, run away. But anyway, I'm going to continue on. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about it. But the Shroud, not only is it the most scrutinized artifact in all Christendom, and pretty much the whole entire world. Egyptian monuments don't get the scrutiny that the Shroud of Turin has gotten. Also, there's been multiple attempts to burn it, at least 2 of them that I know of. It has been hidden, it's been smuggled, it's been threatened, it's been there's been a big attempt to destroy it over the years. And now I'm down to 1. Wow. Hello, 1 that's left. Welcome. Anyway, so the attempt to kind of like destroy the Shroud, it's like if there's nothing to it, then why destroy it? And there's been stuff kind of like that's been piled on top of the Shroud. So many narratives that's been kind of piled on top of it. But the truth of the matter is there is no other artifact in the world that has a whole entire branch of science dedicated to it. It's called syndenology. It's basically the science of the Shroud. And so something that has this many eyeballs on it, has come under this much fire, has been this much energy devoted to destroying it, I've got to think there's something significant about it that maybe we should be talking about. Anyway, so I got a bunch of clips together that I'm going to show you, and hopefully before the end of it, you'll want to check these things out yourself. Now, I got a lot of them from the same lady, and I forgot to look her up, but you put in the Shroud of Turin and she pops right up. You'll see her when it comes up. But the Shroud, one of the reasons, or one of the things that most people criticize, is the fact that from the time it was mentioned in the Bible, and it's the only artifact that's been mentioned in the Bible, where they wrapped Jesus's body in linen. That's the Shroud. Okay. But from that moment to the 1300s, the Shroud was missing, or at least wasn't well documented where it was. And it's called provenance. And so there's a break in the provenance, as it were. So some people use that to to completely, totally throw the whole entire thing out. But when you look at the headcloth, which is called the sudarium of Oviedo, which is the headcloth, it's separate from the Shroud. And that one has a provenance that's almost unbroken. And they have matched the bloodstains on the sudarium to bloodstains on the Shroud. Almost precisely. I mean, if you look at the chances that 2 different cloths would have the exact same bloodstains on them in the configuration that they do, it becomes outlandish. The probability of that. And so when you date the sudarium, you have a complete provenance. Everybody knows where the sudarium was this whole entire time. And so when you take that into account, the provenance of the Shroud is no longer as big of a concern. And I do. So now, why does this matter to us? Okay. What we know is that the impression on this cloth was created in a way that has never been duplicated by mankind. Even with our modern technology, at the moment, our modern technology cannot recreate the Shroud. And we're talking like AI, lasers, and they still have yet to be able to duplicate what's on the shroud. They just can't get that much power into a small enough window to create that flash effect and not completely totally disintegrate the cloth that they're trying to imprint upon. And we'll go into that. It's one of the most incredible things about the shroud, but we will go into that. Okay, so there's this cloth that shows up. They call it the Shroud of Christ, and there's been multiple attempts to burn it. That's why you'll see patches of it burned away, because two times it was attempted to be burned, and one of the times it was within a container, and the container burned and actually dripped onto the cloth and burned part of the cloth, and that's why it looks the way it does. Except, interestingly enough, the part that was burned was not, burned around the image. Burned around the image. So, take of that what you will. Anyway, so the first amazing thing about the Shroud of Turin is what happened the first time, the centuries that we've known about this thing, the first time somebody turned a camera on it. This is what happened.
Now, this piece of cloth is pretty much treated as just a matter of faith, just like all of the supposed bits of the cross you find in churches everywhere, until an accidental discovery in 1898. For the occasion of the 400th birthday of the Turin Cathedral, the city planned a sacred art exhibition and arranged to have a guy named Secondo Pia, the local photography expert, shoot the first ever pictures of the shroud. When he goes back to his darkroom later that day, he gets the shock of his life. Instead of a mostly brown negative image of the mostly yellow piece of linen, his negative reveals not just a full face, but a full body full of visual detail that had never been seen before. Of course, tons of people said he either didn't know what the hell he was doing, or worse, that he faked it. Until another professional photographer named Giuseppe Henri also took photos of the shroud in 1931 and got the same result. The result of both of those photographs is the realization that when looking at the shroud, we are not looking at a positive image. We are looking at a negative image. The real image can only be seen when looking at the negative. And that negative showing the positive image is the iconic vision of the shroud that most people know today.
All right, hold on. Okay. So they discovered when they turned a photograph on it that what they were looking at was the negative of an image, and so not only is it the negative, is the when you reverse it, it's the positive, but it has 3-dimensional information on it. Check this out.
Now, this piece of cloth is pretty much treated as just a matter of faith, just like
Okay, what you're looking at, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. What you're looking at, you're looking at 3-dimensional information. this was not made by AI. It's available into the same machine that they used to bring back topographical maps of the surface of other planets and like Mars. They used the same machine that they used in NASA to get 3D maps of another planet. And so what you see is the information that is there on the shroud. I mean, and not only is it three-dimensional from left to right, but it's also three-dimensional from top to bottom. And the reverse is the same. The reverse is also three-dimensional information because the shroud was draped from the front and the back. And so all this information is available on both sides. Now, if you're a medieval forager, what kind of genius are you to create something that could not be seen with the naked eye and could only be seen with a process that you wouldn't even know where was possible? And not only that, but it's not only photographic information, it's three-dimensional information. Hold on a second. Got some comments over here. Hello, Miss De La Cruz, Iselin De La Cruz. Hey, welcome. Oh, I'm Lucia. Okay, hello, Lucia. Doing good here. We don't have the technology to create this. No, we don't. We do not have the technology. And with AI, they were able to feed some information, information to an AI, and it's online. I didn't grab it. I should have, but there is actually a AI of the face of Christ, and they were able to get a very clear three-dimensional image, and it's able to smile and move its head or whatever. Of course, I'm not entirely sure that's appropriate to have the image on the shroud do that, but it just shows how much information is available that's been imprinted. Okay, and so the mystery begins. You know, the first guy showed the photograph, they discounted it. Photographic technology was brand new, and everybody was like, oh, okay, there's somehow you faked it somehow. Okay. And then the second guy, about 40 years later, gets the same exact result. Using photographic technology has come along quite a way, and so they knew more about photographic technology, and he gets the same result. So that means that there's more going on here that we need to get it investigated. 1 second. Let me get these comments in right quick. Okay. Alrighty. All right. Okay. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I'm just going to come back to that later. Anyway. Okay. So they decide to put together a scientific team. They call it STIRP. Okay. This is the result.
Besides not knowing that he would be the first to photograph the face that many Christians believe is the face of Christ, Secondo Pia also did not know that he would inadvertently create a new branch of scientific study called syndenology, which is the name specifically for the scientific study of the shroud. the word Sinden being Greek for shroud. Scientists from a multitude of disciplines start theorizing about the origin of the shroud's image. But other than studying the photograph and its negative, there isn't really a lot they can do. The shroud is off limits. But by the 1960s, the Turin Archdiocese, who were its acting custodians at the time, they start to think, well, hey, maybe we should figure out the best way to preserve this thing. So they form an 11-member committee, some members of which are scientists who between 1969 and 1973 try to figure out what they need to do. And that's when the first fabric samples are taken. But things really get going in 1977 when the Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STURP, which is a 33-member multidisciplinary team of scientists representing a multitude of countries and a multitude of religious beliefs, including mostly believers, but skeptics as well, is given 120 hours of access to the shroud to collect as much information as they can get. Rumor has it that the night before the testing was to begin, the scientists were gathered at the hotel bar, relishing their free trip to Italy, thinking it's going to take them all of a day to prove this thing is a hoax. Even the believers, but they are wrong. After a day, they're more stumped than ever. The scientists work in shifts to maximize every hour before the 120 hours is up. This includes tape samples and vacuum samples to collect trace evidence and every kind of photography you can imagine. The information gathered is then taken home to be analyzed. It takes them another 3 years to come out with a conclusion. What did they decide? They have no idea. In their final report, they say, "We can conclude for now that the shroud image is that of a real human form of a scourged, crucified man. It is not the product of an artist. The bloodstains are composed of hemoglobin and also give a positive test for serum albumin. The image is an ongoing mystery, and until further chemical studies are made, perhaps by this group of scientists or perhaps by some scientists in the future, the problem remains."
One second. All right. Yeah, anytime I do something like this, I get somebody coming at me in the chat. It's almost like somebody doesn't want me to do this stuff. But they're timed out now. Hopefully they'll continue watching because evidently they do need Jesus. But anyway, so serum albumin. It only appears in the blood when somebody is like intense stress to the point of death. Basically somebody being tortured to death. It's about the only time you'll see that particular substance in somebody's blood. And that was in the hemoglobin that they found in the cloth. By the way, according to the cloth, the blood type of whoever was crucified there is AB positive, I think. I think it's AB positive. I'm not sure. But yeah. What's up? Good afternoon, Tank. Good to see you, man. Magnificent Bunny and Bunny. Yep. Anyway, close enough, dude. I had a little bit of a rascal in my chat earlier. Tank, I think you're still a mod. If you see anybody acting up, please feel free to time them out. Anyway, for however long you're able to stay. But so basically, these scientists, they thought, let's debunk this thing and get on. We get a free trip to Italy. We can debunk it and we can see the sights and then we can go on our way. And yet, they not only could they not debunk it, most of the STURP scientists pretty much stayed on for the rest of their lives. to study the shroud. There's been, we're talking people who were Jewish. We're talking about Christians. We're talking about atheists. We're talking about agnostics. We're talking about, I think there was Hindu people involved, but people have been basically it changed their lives. What they found on the cloth changed their lives, and because what they ran into was a genuine anomaly that they just could not debunk. Okay. Put on there. Yeah, there you go. Be my Ray Shoesmith, if you know who that is. Anyway. Okay. So let's review right quick before we go to this next bit, because this next bit is really important. Okay. First of all, we have a cloth that's mentioned in the Bible. And the headcloth is also mentioned in the Bible. Okay. Now, the headcloth, the Siderium Oviedo, has an unbroken provenance. And it matches up almost exactly with the shroud to an extent that it's almost statistically impossible for it not to be part or not to have been at one point attached to the body that's under the shroud. And the shroud itself has been attempted to be destroyed multiple times, but during the course of those multiple times, one of them being burned, attempt to be burned at one point, 2 points actually. 1 point burned the container it was in, but even though it was dripping metal on the cloth, it only burned parts that weren't the image. You know, almost like divine providence or something. The second time it was burned, though, it burned the upper corner. Now, remember that information, because suddenly people are like, well, why don't we do carbon dating? Because carbon dating is like the gold standard with archaeologists, which really, but it is. And so the Vatican, much to their later chagrin, agrees to do a carbon dating test. And that's when shenanigans happen. Here you go.
Okay, so the sample is cut and divided into 3 roughly equal pieces, 1 for each lab. Michael Tite then brings out the control samples, which have a different weave pattern. But instead of unraveling all of the samples, he leaves them as is, meaning it is now very easy to figure out which one is from the shroud. There goes the blind testing protocol. The samples are weighed and put into numbered metal cylinders, which will go to the 3 testing labs. Oh, and remember that camera crew hired to film the whole thing? They don't film this part. So there's no way to verify which samples go into which containers. Not to mention that Michael Tite decides at the last minute to throw in a 4th sample, some thread from a cape from St. Louis of Anjou, which is known to be dated to the 13th century. They don't have metal cylinders for the extra samples, so they just get put into envelopes. Each lab is given their metal cylinders and their envelope and are asked to sign a receipt. The receipt lists the ages of the control samples. So now they don't even have to bother looking at the weave to figure out which sample is the shroud. It's just written right there for them. This is like the Three Stooges convention. But it gets even better. The weights of the samples the labs receive don't all match the recorded weights of the samples that were taken from the shroud. They were supposed to all perform the test at the same time, but Arizona does theirs in May, Zurich in June, and Oxford does theirs in July. At first, They seem to do a decent job of sticking to the secrecy protocol and reject a request from the Vatican to send one of their people to watch. But Zurich thinks it's perfectly reasonable to let in an entire BBC documentary crew. And remember our friend Harry from the University of Rochester? Well, he manages to twist the arm of someone in the Arizona lab to let him watch the process as long as he signs a non-disclosure agreement. Harry and his assistant have made a bet for a pair of cowboy boots on the outcome of the tests. The assistant thinks the results will be from the time of Christ, but Harry thinks it's going to come back as dating to medieval times. The ink is not even dry on the paper with the results before Harry breaks his NDA by phoning his assistant to claim his shiny new boots. In Oxford, 2 weeks before the results are announced to even the church, a book entitled The Shroud Unmasked, Discovery of the Greatest Forgery of All Time, is already on the presses. When confronted about this breach of secrecy protocol, the guy in charge of the Oxford lab, Professor Edward Thomas Hall, says, "I think it was a hopeless prospect to keep the results secret. You couldn't with the best will in the world." Okay, so the tests are completed and given to Michael Tite at the British Museum. But no one else. The other 2 institutions who are also supposed to analyze the data are completely cut out of the process. The statistical analysis is completed by the people from the British Museum under the watchful eye of Michael Tite, and the results are announced at a press conference including both Professor Hall and Michael Tite in October of 1988, with Professor Hall not mincing words about his thoughts on the matter, stating, "There was a multi-million-pound business in making forgeries during the 14th century. Someone just got a bit of linen, faked it up, and flogged it. Some people may continue to fight for the authenticity of the shroud, like the Flat Earth Society, but this settles it all as far as we are concerned." Nice exclamation point.
Okay. Hold on a second. Got some comments over here. That's but wait, there's more. Smash that like button. Share this out. Yep. There you go. You know all about the BBC. Yeah. I do. Particularly the British Museum. The British Museum and the Smithsonian have some shady history when it comes to messing with artifacts and things like that. We won't go into that. But, okay. This is how a scientific method is supposed to work. So you don't skew the results. You're supposed to everybody is supposed to get the exact same sample. They're supposed to get it at the same time. They're supposed to have no idea of what they're getting. And they're supposed to get control samples that are well marked. So you know if the results are being skewed. They did not do any of those things. If you have separate tests going on at the same time, they have to be done simultaneously. That way you don't skew the results, a possibility of somebody sharing their results with somebody else. They did not do that. And then, on top of that, even if you present the data, you are not to keep the scientific methodology. You have to show all of the data. You don't just show the conclusion. You show all the data sets. That way other people can check your work. They did not do that. They just called this press conference and had that written on the board, with the little exclamation point, and with their arms crossed, we are the authorities, blah, 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 And every single publication in the world ran with that narrative. I mean, I remember Time Magazine doing a whole expose. And there's like this little square at the bottom of the possible problems with this carbon dating test. There's like this one little square, like a late in the article, like the last page or so. But the rest of it was just completely, totally, oh yeah, it's just completely debunked. Okay, I got you. I didn't think you'd stay long. Thank you, Mr. Tank. Talk to you later. Anyway, so this test, this is not just me. It's not me being partisan. This test was a total complete cluster F. Okay, this test was so flawed that no scientific body that has any kind of integrity would ever take the results of this test. And not only did they take the results of this test, but they trumpeted it all over the press, all over the articles, all over the place, saying that the Shroud has been dated to the medieval times. Okay? Problems with that. First of all, if it is a forgery, like it's been, they said, you'd have to be a flat earther to believe the Shroud at this point. If it was a forgery, which by the way, that's complete opinion. That is not scientific, given your results or your scientific method. That is complete opinion. That's bias. Okay. But if it is a forgery, like they have said, like they were declaring, why can't we figure out how it was done? Why can't we replicate it? The scientific method declares that you have to be able to replicate your results, and all the data sets have to be replicated for it to be legitimate. They did not replicate any of their results. Therefore, right off the top of it, out on the face of it, this test should have been invalidated. Nobody should have ever taken this test, seriously. As a matter of fact, the fact that all the samples were clearly marked, that the test was conducted by multiple labs, stair-stepped long enough that they could share the results. And the fact that there was a book already written, by the time they shared the results, there was a book already written and in the press, on the presses, debunking the Shroud. And this other guy had a bet going, which completely skewed his perspective, because he had, if you have any kind of like leaning on the outcome of a test, then you immediately have to recuse yourself. Otherwise, you will skew the results of the test. He did not do that. So they just basically took the scientific method, wiped their butt with it, and then are like, trust me, bro. And that has been the narrative ever since. Everybody you talk to, I've seen every video you go out there that's talking about the Shroud, you'll have all this group of people saying, well, this is how it was done. This is how they forged it. It's that, carbon dating. They won't go past the carbon dating, because they believe carbon dating is the end all be all, because they have preached carbon dating as being like this perfect test or whatever. And all these dinosaurs, millions of years old. This dinosaur is like, these dinosaur bones are millions of years old because of carbon dating. And yet, And yet, how in the world can something be millions of years old and still be in existence? It's like they get this arbitrary number in their head, and they're like, a million years old. Our human recorded history is only about 20,000, maybe 20,000 years old, if that. And so they're telling us millions of years old. We have not even come to 500,000, which is 500,000. We haven't even come to 250,000. And yet they're just arbitrarily declaring that these things are millions of years old. Trust me, bro. Okay. So the same people took this test and dated the Shroud to the same period of time as their control sample, which they did not separate, which they clearly marked. And so they got the exact same result as their control sample. And then refused to share their data sets. You literally had to court order them to share their data sets. Here you go. The whole sort of tale. This is a gentleman who's a syndenologist. He's a priest that's a syndenologist in Italy.
Before we get further, I know that people are going to come in with these thoughts of, wasn't this disproved? So it might be helpful to show why that isn't the case before we go on to kind of assuage people's...
Right, let's do that. Okay, so slide 3 here shows some pictures. This is probably what you saw in Front Page News in 1988.
Look
pictures
at that.
Of Dr.
That must
Michael
frustrate you so much.
Yeah,
looking at that.
Can you see the 1260-1390 exclamation part? That's the exclamation part that really, it just screams academic excellence and propriety, doesn't it?
Yes.
These same guys with this very composed stance with their arms folded before these powered pillars. It just says these same guys got what's the number? I'm going to forget, like how many million in sterling they got for their new museum. Like the next day, it's a matter of the public record. The moment this was published, they were able to build their new laboratory. Some stuff was very fishy from the start, but it's just the case that across the world, Front Page News everywhere was the Turin Shroud it's been proven to be a medieval fake. It tells us nothing, therefore, about Jesus' sufferings. It can't be considered a relic, etc., etc. And so if you still believed that the Shroud was real after this point, you might as well believe that the earth is flat. You're about the same category. And my heart just goes out for those people who are serious students, are the ones who had dedicated hundreds of thousands of hours, especially the team from STIRP in 1978. These guys had published already over 20 peer-reviewed scientific journal articles. They knew from the start to be suspicious of this.
Really?
But what I like, and this I would lead with this now, is that as of 2017, we have a published article that shows that the conclusions from 1988 are no longer sustainable. So I should say that again, the very publication, Archaeometry, out of Oxford, that
published this
1260 to 13, it said that conclusion can no longer be sustained. And I'm
sure that hit the front pages all around the world too, right?
Right. No, exactly. So though it is a matter of mainstream science. So if you want to find in the literature, you're going to bump into this. The French researcher who published this article is Tristan Casabianca, another friend of ours who teaches at our university. And he goes into all the details. It's a fascinating story. But I want to say it was in 2017 that according to the Freedom of Information Act, these laboratories were compelled by law to release the raw data that shows how heterogeneous were their individual results. Because there was Oxford, Zurich, Oxford, and Arizona. Those were the 3 laboratories. And the idea was that they were going to publish independently and that their particular results, but that didn't happen. They lumped them together and gave us this big ARC 1260 to 1390 95% sure that this is the time period from which the shroud hails, and so it's fake. But the bottom line is that they use a sample from the top left corner of the shroud, which we know to be anomalous. It's just not representative of the rest of the shroud. And we knew that, and we had proof of that 10 years prior. You would think somebody would have the sense.
Do you think they knew that?
Well, they ought to have known. That much we know. We knew though this, that in the moment that they're cutting the sample, 8 centimeters of the most prized relic in all of Christendom, and of course you know that with carbon dating, you carbonize it, as you destroy, you put into a fire basically this cloth, never to be seen again. And so you'd think you'd be very careful. Like, compare that to the STURP team, this Shroud of Turin research project of 1978. For a whole year, they prepare just so all of their tests will be non-invasive, non-destructive. And yet here, we're about to destroy forever 8 centimeters, and they don't know where they're going to take the sample 2 hours prior to the experiment. And it's all on videotape. In Italy, there was a documentary that came out just telling this whole fiasco, and it's called La Notte della Sindone. It's the night of the shroud. And you know who does the narrating, if I'm not mistaken, is the same actress. I'm going to forget her name now, who plays the devil in The Passion of the Christ. Yeah. So it's got some fun imagery there. It's a little
on the nose.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little edgy, but the fact is I can understand why some people were upset. But here's the thing. Even if you think that those laboratories did good science, and I'm willing to be benevolent and say as much, even if they did perfect science, they did so on a sample that tells us literally nothing about the rest of the shroud. Like, you could look at the chemical composition, like you can see a map, what's called a brightness map from the UV fluorescence. Like, turn off the lights, shine UV, capture what fluoresces, and it tells you about the chemical composition of the cloth. It's all uniform. It's all like orange hues, maybe a little yellow, a little red, but it's not forest green. But that's exactly what color it is in that top left corner. Like, a little kid in kindergarten can point to that and say, look, Mom, that part is different. And yet this is where these, world-renowned scientists.
Okay, let me make sure I still have. Okay. All right. Just making sure I still have sound. I did like 15 minutes the other night without sound. Okay. So that textile historian, that some nuns, when it was burned, actually repaired it using a painstaking method of repairing cloth that was available around the time that it was burned. And incidentally, around the same time that they dated the shroud too. But these nuns carefully reconstructed. They took it apart like thread by thread, and then wove another patch onto it thread by thread. It's incredible that they were able to do this, that they had that capability. But it's proven that they had this capability at that time. And that the composition of that part that they took the sample from was cotton, was a cotton blend rather than the flax that the rest of the shroud is. And so there's just simply no way that the carbon dating test is accurate. And yet nobody carried that story. I didn't hear about it. And until I started doing the shroud, I saw that gentleman talk about the shroud, and I started doing my own research. I didn't know that they had completely debunked the carbon dating. completely debunked carbon dating. Now, the thing that makes the Shroud so incredible, and not only is the image a three-dimensional image, not only is the image a complete negative, technology is just not available. You basically, if this painter managed to paint a negative in the medieval times, then he's the greatest painter that's ever lived. People like have associated Leonardo da Vinci with this, that he possibly did it. But Leonardo da Vinci was a painter of the positive images. There's no evidence that he ever messed with negative images. As a matter of fact, nobody even knew what that was back when the people want to say that this was forged. But there's another thing. The other reason why the Shroud is so incredible. And let me play this.
Now, I told you at the beginning of all of this that I was saving the best for last, and I am about to make good on that promise. I know this is going to blow your mind because it is absolutely blown mine. This one bit of information might just be enough to make me a believer. If you look at the pictures of the Shroud, either the positive or the negative, it's pretty easy to see that there's a lot of shading happening in the image. We know we're not dealing with pigments. So let's say you're drawing something with a pencil that requires shading. How would you do that? Well, you would probably apply more pencil lead where you want the picture to be darker and less pencil lead in the lighter areas, right? If you were to transfer that idea to the Shroud, that would mean more of this yellowing, aging effects in the darker areas and less in the lighter ones. But that is not what is happening on the Shroud. The darker colored areas are not the result of a change in color intensity. Instead, it is the result of a larger or smaller amount of colored or aged fibers per unit area. It's called the halftone effect, and it's the same way newspapers used to print pictures before the days of digital printing. I don't even know how to wrap my head around that one. So what on earth, or maybe beyond Earth, could do something like that? Well, believers and some scientists have a theory. They are speculating that if you follow biblical teachings about the resurrection, perhaps there was a massive particle radiation burst from whatever was lying inside those layers of cloth, changing the very molecular composition of the Shroud fibers. This radiation burst would account for many of the unusual features of the cloth, like the fact that only the topmost layers of the yellowed fibers are affected, why the bloodstains still appear so red, the extra carbon-14 molecules that throw off the carbon dating, the fact that the density of the image is the same on both the front and back images, and even the odd proportions of some of the body parts. And scientists have already run experiments where they bombarded a piece of flax linen similar to that of the Shroud with protons and were left with a piece of cloth bearing the exact same rapid aging characteristics that are present in the Shroud. Or others think maybe it was UV radiation. Tests conducted using UV rays also replicated the same changes to the fibers. One interesting note, the UV testing that was done used a laser pulse that lasted only 1/40 billionth of a second and required billions of watts of power. If you expand those calculations to what would be necessary to imprint the entire Shroud, that would require 14,000 lasers operating simultaneously using 34 trillion watts of power. Of course, if this is the true resurrection, I think God would be able to muster all the energy he needs.
Okay. So there you go. to replicate what's on the flax linen that's on the shroud, to replicate that shadow, that particular phenomenon would take around 96 million joules of energy expanded in just a fraction of a second to not damage the cloth. In other words, in a blink, less than a blink of an eye. I mean, just boom. Something inside the shroud radiated enough energy to imprint itself on both the front and the back of the shroud in a three-dimensional image, negative. So, if you believe that somebody can possibly, replicate that, somehow duplicate it, you have more faith than I do. Because that's staggering to me. I'm going to play this one last thing. Now, I'm not sure that it's going to flag. It didn't flag when I put it through the system. But I want you to see this. Somebody took the information, the three-dimensional information found on the shroud, and created, well, let me just show you. Okay. Hold on.
For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has become one of the most mysterious and controversial pieces of cloth on the face of the planet. For some, it's a hoax, or it's an ordinary person who came to their demise in some brutal way. But to others, it represents something truly remarkable. And now, for the first time, experts have spent years recreating what they believe to be the mystery man under the shroud. The mysterious Shroud of Turin is something that has baffled scientists for years and been a source of great wonder to faithful all over the world. And now, here at the Cathedral of Salamanca in Spain, a new exhibition has been launched that aims to portray, like never before, the body that was wrapped in that shroud. Inside the cathedral, the exhibition is on display, showing various paintings and items to illustrate the last days of Jesus' life. Álvaro Blanco is a Spanish art expert and the man behind the entire project.
What makes this exhibition special is that after 14 years investigating the Holy Shroud, we have reached a point where it's no longer a debate of science, but more a debate of reality. We know that the shroud was wrapped around a body of a man, and now we have reproduced that man.
Much work has been done throughout the centuries to try and confirm or disprove the authenticity of the actual Shroud of Turin, but never before has such painstaking work been put into recreating a life-sized model of the man who would have been under it.
For the first time in history, the image we have created on the shroud lacks the influence of an artistic movement. It is not Romanesque, it is not Gothic, it is not Michelangelo, it is not Renaissance, no. This is reality, it's hyper-realism.
At the end of the exhibition is what the organisers are calling the hyper-realistic figure of the mystery man. And in front of the waiting press and local dignitaries, the figure is unveiled to the world. The figure is an extraordinary piece of work, looking incredibly lifelike. The hyper-realistic sculpture, which is made of latex, silicone and real human hair, has been based on data collected from the Shroud of Turin.
La piel se hunde, la piel, el vello es humano.
The skin sinks. The hair is human. It weighs 75 kilos. It behaves like a person. It is real, right? I think this has been a big risk because we didn't manage to create successfully the image of the man under that shroud.
Even the head has wounds and blood, the suggestion being that they're from the crown of thorns. The exhibition is not claiming that this is the figure of Jesus Christ, or not. It wants people to visit and view it and come to their own conclusion of who the mystery man is. But for its creator,
it's pretty staggering. There's so much three-dimensional information on the shroud that they were able to do a life-size 3D replica of the individual on the shroud. And there's several things that they discovered when they examined the not only is the shroud an image of a body, but it's actually an X-ray image of a body, in that they have found details of the interior of the body in the shroud, and there's been several things that they discovered that that's always been a misnomer. Okay, every time you see the crown of thorns, you always see the circlet, right? Well, they discovered that the way the damage is to the scalp, and you saw that in that figure, that what they did was basically the Romans weren't going to fashion something. You know, the Roman soldiers, they weren't men of they weren't going to create something. So what they think happened due to the damage, they think they took a thorn bush and just basically wrapped it in a ball and then shoved it down on his head like a helmet. And that just seems, knowing Roman soldiers, it just seems more accurate that they would do something like that, to just grab a thorn bush and just shove it down on his head. And so because there's thorn damage from all the way from his crown, all the way to the top of his head, all the way around. And it would have bled incredibly. Face was probably a mask of blood. Another thing that they discovered at an angle through the palm, but that wouldn't have held. Okay, you always see depictions of and he did say that touch the holes in my hands. But according to the shroud, the nail went from here out through here, into the cross, and so you had this whole part of the hand that would have been supporting the body, and that makes more sense too. That was a discovery. They wasn't quite entirely sure. They always thought that maybe he nailed through here, but then the scripture always said that he said, touch the holes in my hands. And so they're like, well, it couldn't have been in his hands. And that was a lot of atheists brought that up. It says, well, it doesn't make sense that, he says through his hands, but there's no way a nail through a hand would hold. And so why did he say, touch the holes in my hands to doubting Thomas? Well, it's because both things were right. Both things were true. He nailed through the palm, through here, and out there to hold him in place. And that's in the Shroud of Turin. Remember that till they looked at the information on the Shroud of Turin. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about a document of an event. We're talking about a proven commodity that if you are a Christian, Protestant, Catholic, I don't care who you are, you should learn about this artifact. And they provided like entire work studies are available. There's entire classes that are available online, and there's information coming out about it every day. They discovered just a couple years ago. They used a scatter electron microscope on some of the like seeds that they found inside in the fibers of the shroud, and dated it all the way back to the time of Christ. That's recent. And so if it is a medieval forgery, why would it have microscopic particles of plant life dated all the way back to the time of Christ? I mean, the volume of information that's available now, the amount of proof that's on the side of this being legitimate is incredible. And so when you bring us up to somebody and they bring up the carbon dating, bring up 2017 after the Freedom of Information Act forced them to publish their results, their whole entire data set, they immediately turned around and said it's not supported. It's no longer supported. So the only thing they have is that. And so another thing you can do is ask them, well, how did they do it? Because they have tried everything. Any kind of explanation I'm going to get in my chat, which I probably in my later on, is I can tell you right now they've already tried it, and they just cannot debunk it. And so, if it is legitimate, which I believe it is, what does it say about our faith? What does it say about Christianity? What does it say about our belief in Jesus Christ? You answer that question, then happy Easter. Anyway, thank y'all for coming. Hopefully, I don't have too many delays. Hopefully, moving it to a different time might have helped with my my internet delays. I've seen it freeze up a couple times, so I may go back and listen to it later, and it'd be horrible. I don't know, but hopefully enough of me got through today to make the point. But anyway, but yeah, check us out. Check out the Shroud. Check out the information that's available, and look into it. I don't care if you're Protestant or Catholic. It's important. And thank you for all for coming. Once again, happy Easter from a bunny to you. Follow the white rabbit. And we will see you next time, everybody. Thumbs up.